In the Gospel of Mark, we read, "Some people brought to Jesus a man who was deaf and could hardly talk. And they begged Jesus to place his hand on him. After he took him aside, away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears. Then he spat and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven, and with a deep sigh said to him, 'Ephata,' which means, 'be opened.' At this, the man's ears were opened. His tongue was loosed, and he began to speak plainly. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone, but the more he did so, the more they kept talking about it. People were overwhelmed with amazement. 'He has done everything well,' they said. 'He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak.' Today my grandfather would have been 100 years old. That makes me think of him, especially when it is about hearing today. In the last decades of his life, he heard less and less. A life with loud ship engines had left its mark. When I think of him, I see him in front of me, engrossed in a book or a crossword puzzle, and somehow amused with himself. No, it wasn't that he couldn't hear anything. He had his buttons in his ear, his hearing aids, so he could be involved and have a conversation. But if it got too much for him, or if too many people were talking at once, or if he wanted to have a quiet nap after lunch, he simply switched off. Sometimes I wish I could do that too, just be able to switch off. When the news is pounding on me, pounding in my ears and creeping into the heart. The news from Afghanistan, of people in fear for their lives, who don't know what will happen in the next days. The news that someone has been infected and of the family's concerns for him or her. And COVID statistics and the same discussions again and again and again. Sometimes I want to switch it all off. I don't want to hear about all that stuff anymore. I wish for the world to be at peace and me with it. But I can't switch off. It wouldn't be a real life if it shut out the world. The biblical text we are dealing with today is about hearing and speaking, and what it is like to be able to participate in the world again. This story is about much more than just a healing. It is not only about that one person who can hear all at once. It is about us. About us not being able to hear and not wanting to hear. It is about being involved. About listening and speaking, receiving and giving, getting in touch with others, perceiving them, and being perceived. That is the center of life, and it is the center of faith. Nothing less than this is what it is all about. Some people brought to Jesus a man who was deaf and could hardly talk. And already I am surprised. If it were a paralyzed person, it would make sense. That one wouldn't be able to walk by himself. But this one, a deaf mute, he can walk. But maybe he needs someone to encourage him. Someone who signals to him, "Come with me. I have hope that everything will be all right, and I share that hope with you." Everything begins with someone taking us by the hand, learning to walk and learning to love and healing and believing. None of this can be done alone, not even by our own efforts. It all starts with someone saying, "Come," and you dare and you trust someone, and then you go. There's some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and that is already the beginning of the change. Jesus took him aside, away from the crowd. Jesus turns completely to this person. It is obvious not about a miracle that is supposed to happen in front of everyone and astonish everyone, and where everyone then says, "How does he do that?" It is not about proving that such a miracle can happen. General truths are of no use when someone is in a need. Change happens here. and change is always concrete and has its own unrepeatable place and time. Jesus took him aside, away from the crowd. It is about this one person and what he needs right now. And such change usually happens in secret, but it happens. Ephata, Jesus says in Aramaic, be opened. This does not only mean ears and mouth. It is about the whole person. For he who does not hear and speak is enclosed within himself, and at the same time excluded from the others. Ephata, be opened. This not only puts hearing and speaking in order, but also everything between people and also for us humans being in the world. Ephata, be opened. Turn to the world. Don't block out the bad news and the misery. The world is what it is. It is not a paradise or a rose garden, but a wonderful and at the same time broken place where you are needed. I notice Jesus is not the one who miraculously fixes everything. Ephata, that requires something of the man who is there with Jesus. It requires something of us to open up or also to close ourselves off. That is a thing that we can do. I think of my grandfather and how good it is to listen intentionally, to step out when you need silence, and to actively intervene, to be there when you should be listening. Ephata, open yourself, human being, to God and to your fellow human beings. He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. So people rejoice and go on saying it. Do you notice anything? Suddenly it's not about this one miracle only. People are rejoicing because they realize what happened there, that someone could hear and speak again, is possible for us too, through Jesus, when we become open to this world, where we consciously listen and consciously choose our words. We are open to Him, and that is the point where the miracle starts to happen. Amen.